It's time to take a look at all 9 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies and rank them in a tier list. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm the movie ranker, and today I'm ranking all 9 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies in a tier list. This should be interesting. Going through my tiers are the same as Friday the 13th when I did that video. We got top tier, great flick, a damn good time, perfectly okay, dumb fun, what were you thinking, and pure garbage. So 9 films, let's go through them quickly. So let's kick things off with the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. To me, this is easily Tobe Hooper's best film, and it's one that I love more and more as the years go by. Every time I rewatch it, I just fall more and more in love with it. It's basically perfection at this point. I really love the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One of my favorite 70s films ever. It's dark, it's gritty, it got that grindhouse feel. Love the cinematography. Love even the sound effects, the sound of that like I think it's like the light bulb on the flash of the camera or something. But damn, even that is iconic at this point. To the house, the characters. Love the psychotic family, the Sawyers, and not just Leatherface. The whole family is great and unique in their own ways. I love the main characters as well, especially Sally. She's such a survivalist, a fighter. You know, she's scared to death, but she's still a fighter. And by the end, you're like, that girl has been through hell and back, and you can really see it on the actress's face too by the end. And it's funny, the movie's just not as gory as a lot of people seem to think it is. It's more psychological. It's still violent, but you don't see a lot of blood or gore or nothing like that. But it didn't need that. It leaves a lot of things up to the imagination, which can be even worse. And that whole dinner scene at the end is one of the most disturbing scenes in cinema history, in my opinion. And just knowing all the behind the scenes of how hot it was at the time and the food was spoiling on the table and everything, I think that just ups the atmosphere in the room when they were filming. And it is just super disturbing. All those shots of like Sally's eyes up close and everything really gets under your skin. And just how demented this family is. They really sell that. And I also love the whole Leatherface dance at the end when he's spinning with his chainsaw. So everything about this film is friggin' awesome in my opinion. So it's going up there in top tier. It's a classic for a good reason. And I think it will stand the test of time over the years. It's still going to be remembered. Up next, we got Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Oh boy. Now, I prefer my Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be horror-eccentric, not comedy. And this one leans way too much into the comedy, even though that's what Tobe Hooper intended. But it's just not really for me. There are some things I enjoy in here. The Tom Savini effects are great. The gore in that, they really up that compared to the original. A Stretch is a pretty good final girl, even though she can get annoying at times with her screams and everything. I think she's a little bit overrated, but I do enjoy her. Dennis Hopper is hilarious in here, and I can't believe he's even in this flick. And as for the Sawyer family, I think they're all great in here. I like the addition of Chop Top, even though, again, you can get kind of annoying, especially by the third act. But yeah, the Sawyers aren't the problem here. Like I said, it's just the tone's kind of all over the place. You got scenes where like Leatherface is removing people's faces and putting them on him and putting them on Stretch and everything. And it's like really creepy and disturbing. But then again, you get other scenes where he's like in love with her and just acting really foolish and silly. So I don't know. It just doesn't quite work for me as good as I want it to. And it's just hard to believe that this family never got caught and they just like went into hiding, and their new location is this like abandoned amusement park or something. Very odd. And Dennis Hopper going around with his 2 chainsaws, just cutting down poles and stuff. It's a very wacky movie. It has some horror elements into it, but it's definitely more of a black comedy, which again is what Tobe Hooper was intending to make. But it's just not really my thing. That whole radio scene where Leatherface has his chainsaw and is going between Stretch's legs, and she's like, "Are you good?" And it's like the the chainsaw is supposed to be like his third appendage or whatever, his penis, but it's just very weird. I'm gonna put it under dumb fun because I feel like that's what it is. A lot of people love this sequel, and if you do, that's awesome. The first time I heard of this movie, it was recommended to me by a coworker, and he told me it was way better than the original, and it's so good and funny. And I looked at the cover, I'm like, that's pretty clever, them all posed like the Breakfast Club. Then I watched the movie, I'm like, it's not what I was expecting. The humor just didn't quite land with me, and I don't know, it just didn't quite work. So for me, it's going in dumb fun. There is fun to be had, but it is dumb. Up next is Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. I feel like this movie gets so much hate and I just don't understand it. This is like an annual watch for me. I have the Blu-ray even, and I have a good time every time I put it on. It's not top tier, obviously, like the original, but for being in this franchise, I feel like it's one of the better flicks. They kind of keep the same formula, but I just really like the family in this one. I like how it's not trying to be a horror comedy. It's definitely back to its roots, being more horror centric, which is awesome. I like Ken Foray in here. He's like a survivalist. We get Viggo Mortensen in here, who you think is good at first, but you find out he's really part of the family. And yeah, the whole family is really fun to watch. They even have like a little girl this time around, which changes things up. And Leatherface is really cool in here. I like his new face he put on. It actually looks pretty grotesque and looks like it could be an old human face that he's wearing, so I think they get that right. I think the gore is pretty good. I think Leatherface's new chainsaw is pretty badass. The big ass saw he has. So yeah, I don't get the hate from this. It's like I said, it's not like amazing or anything, but a lot of people put this at the bottom of the franchise and I just don't get it. So to me, this is going in a damn good time. I know I'm in the minority, but I really enjoy part 3. Up next, we got Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The New Generation, the 4th entry, and wow, this movie has its fans, surprisingly. Every time I put out a Texas Chainsaw Massacre video or am on another person's channel talking about this franchise, when this gets brought up, there's always someone that say they enjoy it. And I get it. If you have nostalgia for it, or if you're just into these more low-budget, goofy type flicks, perhaps you'll enjoy this. But for me, it just does not work. I hate this film. It's one of the worst horror sequels from a big franchise, in my opinion. One of the worst ever made in that regard. We get Matthew McConaughey, weirdly enough, and Renee Zellweger in here before they went on to win big awards. But they're not that great in here. Matthew McConaughey has an entertaining performance with just how crazy he goes. Like, all these gestures he's doing and yelling out and just being a complete psycho. But if I want to see that, I'll go watch clips on YouTube. I'm not going to throw on this movie just to watch that, because the rest of this film is complete garbage, man. It's so bad. It feels like it's amateurly directed and filmed. It feels super cheap. Leatherface is pretty much drag most of this movie, and he or she is not scary one bit, not menacing at all. There's literally a scene where the final girl looks at Leatherface like, "You shut the F up and sit down," and he listens. It's like, don't disrespect Leatherface like that. So I really hate that. And then they try to throw you this random twist where the family is being run by this organization, by this like secret society, and this is like a whole social experiment that they're doing or something. Just dumb, dumb, dumb. Everything about this movie is bad, like really bad, and there's no redeemable qualities, if you ask me. So to me, it's going in pure garbage. You thought Freddy's Dead was bad. You thought Jason Goes to Hell was bad. You ain't seen nothing until you see The Next Generation. Up next is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. As for post 2000s remakes, this might be the best one. It's definitely up there as one of the best ones. It sets itself apart from the original. While they do still feel like they're part of the same franchise, this one kind of takes it in a different direction, which I really appreciate, because I hate when they copy and paste remakes than the original. It's like, what's the point? So this one does have a point. It has a pretty good story. It has great cinematography once again, much like the original. I love the shot at the first where the girl blows her head off with the gun, and the camera goes through the hole in her head and out the back of the vehicle. It's really well done. Probably the best shot in this franchise, if you ask me. And the huge standout here in this film is R. Lee Ermey. Like, he steals the show every time he's on screen. He's the scariest out of the Hewitt family this time around instead of the Sawyers. Yeah, he puts Leatherface to shame. I would not want to be in a room with this cop. Again, quotations. He just gives a friggin' legendary performance, and and the characters don't know whether to trust him or not, even though he seems like a really bad person, but yet he's wearing the uniform. So I like everything about that, and all the other characters are really great in here as well. Some of them make some dumb decisions, but that's bound to happen in these slasher type flicks. Jessica Biel gives a great performance too as our main lead. I think she's great. And the whole third act to this flick is pretty damn entertaining, where we get quite a bit of little action in here, a lot of scares, and a lot of great moments, especially with Jessica Biel's character, trying to escape and survive against this family. So to me, like I said, it's one of the better remakes. There's only one scene I always like shake my head at, and it's when they're in the basement and that one character is like tied up, and he asks for Jessica Biel's character, their main girl, to finish him off, and she like stabs him in the stomach or the chest or something in this really ridiculous way. It's been a while since I watched this, but yeah, I just remember that scene always bugged me. But everything else is pretty great about this flick, so to me, it's going up in the great flick. I don't think it's quite top tier, but it's almost there. It doesn't quite reach the same levels as the original, but I still really do enjoy it. Moving on to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Beginning, which is a prequel to the remake. And it gives you a lot of answers that you weren't really asking. Like, you ever wonder how the guy with no legs lost his legs, the guy in the wheelchair in the family? They'll show you. You ever wonder how R. Lee Ermey's character got the cop uniform? This shows you. Ever wonder if Leatherface was adopted? See, it answers a lot of questions, but we just weren't asking them. And there was one question I was really asking that they never did answer. It's the starting of the remake, that girl shoots herself. I figured we are going to learn about her and her crew, but no, this takes place even before that, so we don't even get that question answered for us, unfortunately. Really, this movie has the same problem as most prequels, where certain characters are too safe because we know they can't die. They're going to be in the next movie, the remake, in particular the Hewitt family. So that's unfortunate and kind of takes away from some of the thrills in the film. Of course, all of the crew going visiting Texas has a chance of getting killed, of course. But yeah, it's just the same problem I have with most prequels. The characters are okay, but they're much more forgettable than the remake. I do like that there's this whole thing about going to war and getting drafted and, running away, not going. That's kind of interesting, but that's kind of it. Everything else is very forgettable in terms of the characters. And yeah, it's an okay time when I put on the beginning, but it's not super satisfying or anything. I'll usually only put this on if I'm in the mood to watch it with the remake, pair them side by side, but I can never see me really throwing this on its own, right? Lastly, I just want to say I think the intro is pretty cool, where it shows them working at the slaughterhouse, and it does let you know why these people became cannibals due to their situation. So that's all great, but I'm going to put this movie in perfectly okay. It's harmless. I don't think it's quite as good of a time as it could have been, but yeah, it's kind of harmless. Up next is Texas Chainsaw 3D. Now, any movie with 3D effects in it, especially a horror movie, they're usually not very good. And yeah, the 3D components of this film don't hurt it all that much, like some, but it still doesn't help one bit. There's no need for this to be 3D. It's just a gimmick. I like the whole intro to this, how we get the aftermath of the original film and the big shootout at the house. I think that's really cool. Unfortunately, them making this a sequel to the original film, they totally forgot about the timeline, because nothing adds up. This should be taking place like 40 years later, yet Alexander Daddario's character is only 20 some years old, where she was a baby in the intro. So that doesn't make any sense, doesn't add up. And there are a few ridiculous scenes in here. Again, with the timeline, like people on new age cell phones and stuff where nothing adds up. But plus, we got that whole scene where do your thing, cuz, where Leatherface starts working with our main girl because they find out they're related. Um, it is very ridiculous, but I kind of have fun with that, to tell you the truth. And the rest of the film is pretty decent with the kills and whatnot. It has a decent amount of atmosphere and gore. And Leatherface is okay in here, but I'm not a big fan of his look. I don't know, something about his mask and that red sweater just doesn't really sit well with me, but the character himself is okay. Again, I don't think it was the smartest decision to have him work with the good guys, like having it as a team up movie near the end, but it is what it is. I think I'm going to stick this one in dumb fun. Normally, I would probably put this up in perfectly okay because I do enjoy it much more than part 2, but there is some very dumb decisions when they made this movie, which should have been corrected. Easy corrections, you know, so I don't think it should quite fit into the perfectly okay. It is pretty dumb. So next up, we got Leatherface, the origin story to the character. And if you remove all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff from this film, it's a pretty decent on the run thriller, a grimy thriller about these mental patients on the run. They kidnap a nurse and the cops are basically on their trail trying to get them. A movie like that, it's pretty decent. It's, like I said, it's a pretty good time. But as soon as you start inserting this into the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, that's where we have problems, because the character that they chose to make Leatherface, his journey doesn't make sense. He doesn't have a convincing arc in here, because for most of the film, he's a pretty level-headed guy. He's, a good friend. He's not mean or anything or visceral. And while the other characters around him kind of are, so you don't expect him to be Leatherface, but that's kind of the whole twist at the end. He becomes Leatherface, which I don't think worked at all. It wasn't earned. There's this one event that happens that makes him turn, and I don't think that was enough. They should have been slowly pushing him towards that if that was the decision they were going to make. And the only reason why they were doing this, I feel, is because they want to trick us into thinking that the bigger guy that was with them was going to be Leatherface. Where once you know what's going on, it just feels like you've been tricked, and not in a good way. So I really hate that about this film. But as I said, I think the characters are decent. A lot of people say this movie gets too dark in certain scenes, but it's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, so I have no faults with that. I think in particular when they find that trailer or whatever, and there's a dead body in the bed, and there's two couples end up going in bed with that dead body, and weird things happen. But I mean, they're mental patients, they're crazies, they're serial killers, and this is, like I said, a TCM film, so that didn't bother me so much, even though it was really weird and kind of crossed the line. Like I said, it's just inserting this into this franchise, which pisses me off. If it wasn't in this franchise, I think this would be an easy 3-star film, but it does drop once you insert it. So to me, this one's dropping down into what were you thinking? Because there really was no need of this being a TCM film. And I bet you any money this was actually a different script that they seen, and they said, we can greenlight this if you just tweak it into this franchise. That's how it seems anyway, but yeah, a decent enough time if you can turn your brain off. And lastly, we got the newest entry, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which came out on Netflix. And yeah, I didn't have much faith in this film before it released, due to a lot of people leaving the project early on. Like Fede Alvarez was supposed to direct this. Yeah, it's not a good film in my opinion. It's supposed to be a sequel to the original flick. Once again, this timeline is so messed up in this franchise. And yeah, I just can't buy that personally. They have Leatherface in like this orphanage and everything in this town, and to me it's just not adding up. The town looks super cheap. You can tell it's just a set, like a studio that they built. There's literally like one street, the only street they show in this town. There's one scene in particular I really like out of this whole film, and that's where the vehicle crashes into the field and Leatherface gets to make a face for the first time in the film. And the face that he makes out of that guy looks really good. I think it's actually a really cool look for Leatherface. So that's not my problem with the film, and that scene looks great. I'm not a fan of anything else. The characters all kind of suck. While they do a decent job with the themes and working on trauma that some of our characters have from their past, I'm not a big fan of any of these characters, to be honest. They're all kind of forgettable. Leatherface himself, like I said, I like his look, but I'm not a fan of how they wrote this character. And he's almost like supernatural at this point. The dude's like supposed to be in his 70s, and the way he moves in the third act and the things he does, I'm like, this guy has to have superpowers. Sally, they put Sally in this film, which was incredibly stupid. Of course, the actress who played Sally wasn't able to reprise this role. I believe she passed away. They got someone else, but she's set up to be this badass throughout, and she is not. She shows up at the end just to get friggin' destroyed. And that stupid line, "You remember me?" or something like that to Leatherface. And he doesn't give a damn about you, Sally. So yeah, I really like Sally in the original. Hated what they did with her in this one. She was completely wasted. And I think the film would have been better if they just would have removed her altogether. So many problems with this film. A lot of people like the whole bus scene, or the bus massacre, which could have been a lot of fun, but came off as silly and stupid to me. Especially with people like filming Leatherface while he's killing them. I know that's supposed to talk about social commentary on how people are nowadays, how they're glued to their phones, even in situations like this. But I don't know, it was just dumb, especially for the amount of people on that bus. They could have like overpowered Leatherface, or at least went around him while he was killing other people and escaped from the bus. Just dumb decisions. So I have a lot of problems with this flick. So to me, it's going into, what were you thinking? Like, who thought this was a good idea? Even though this movie seems to have its fans out there, but again, I am just not one of them. As you can see, this franchise isn't for me. I only got one top tier, maybe only one in pure garbage, but a lot of stuff near the bottom of the list. And if I'm being perfectly honest, there's maybe 3-4 films in this franchise that I'll return to on a regular basis, at least annually. You know, everything else I don't care if I ever see again, if I'm being honest. So there you have it. That's the way I tier rank these films. Let me know how you would do it down in the comments section. I'll have a great discussion. Like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future videos. What other tier rankings do you want me to do, or other rankings in general? Drop some suggestions down in the comment section. My next video should be my subscriber month ranking video, if you guys are wondering about that. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, thanks for watching.